Ranking member yields back. And with that, I believe that Mr. Schmidt, you're going to yield your time. Is that correct? Okay, so Mr. Schmidt is going to yield his time to Mr. Kiley, who's not going to speak quite yet because Mr. Gil is in front of you, but I wanted to make that note. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schmidt. With that, Mr. Gil is next in line from the great state of Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for putting this hearing together here and helping us continue to identify waste, fraud, and abuse that we can cut out of our federal budget, particularly abuse that is pushing left-wing pet projects. But before I jump into that, I'd like to address something that one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle mentioned earlier about gender equity. I find it particularly amusing that the party who doesn't know how many genders there are to begin with has the gall to lecture us about gender equity. But if we want to talk about gender equity, let's talk about it. Which party believes that men should be using women's bathrooms? It's not this side of the aisle, it's the Democrat Party.
Welcome back to America First, Patriots. I'm your host, and if this is your first time here, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because we're bringing you the truth that the mainstream media won't tell you. Today, we're diving into some explosive testimony from a recent congressional hearing that exposes just how deep the swamp really goes. What you're about to hear should make every American's blood boil. We have testimony revealing how the Biden administration used your tax dollars to interfere in the domestic politics of our own allies. That's right, folks. While they lecture us about foreign interference in our elections, they were doing exactly that to friendly nations around the world.
Which party believes that men should be playing in women's sports? It's not this side of the aisle, it's the Democrat Party. Which party believes that our tax dollars should fund transgender surgeries for minors? It's not this side of the aisle, it's that side of the aisle. And those are things that they don't like to talk about because they know how wildly unpopular they are with the American people. But that is the reality, and that's what we are up against right now is a Democrat Party that is pushing some of the most wild and perverse social programs on the American people. But with that said, I'd like to jump into the point of this hearing, which is not gender equity. It's to talk about other left-wing projects. And Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for being here, and thank you for taking the time. During President Biden's tenure, USAID under Samantha Powers took a particular interest in Hungary. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Congressman.
Would you say that USAID's involvement in that country, including funding media organizations, was nonpartisan, or do you think that was used to push a particular agenda?
Oh, it was meant to do regime change in a NATO ally, and a very key NATO ally. That was unconscionable.
Would you say that Hungary is an important NATO ally in Central and Eastern Europe?
Yes, it borders Ukraine. I believe, yes, it borders Serbia as well. Yeah, this is not, this was something, we should never be doing this in friendly countries to begin with. Mm-hmm. The fact that Samantha Powers did this and met with leaders of the opposition before she met with government ministers whom she scolded. And our ambassador, well, I don't want to go into it because I know you have more questions, but.
Well, that's where I'm going with this. Why do you think that the Biden administration was so interested in using our tax dollars to funnel monetary support for domestic political opposition in an allied nation in order to harm a democratically elected government?
Well, for the same reason it did it in Guatemala and Macedonia with equally pro-U.S. leaders. It just didn't like conservative governments that were trying to do things like fighting for life, fighting for demographic growth in all these countries, disagreed with their foreign policy. All these leaders were also very pro-Israel, pro-Taiwan, in the case of Guatemala. So I think that it was just the Biden administration disagreed with the politics of these countries, even though it went against U.S. interests to disagree with these governments.
Right, and that's where I was going as well. Do you think that any of Hungary's domestic policies in question here, whether it's related to woke ideology or identity politics or migration, have any bearing on America's national security interests in the region?
It was completely the opposite. It played exactly into Vladimir Putin's hands. It made pro-American Hungarians and Guatemalans or Macedonians question the United States and think of alternatives. It was very misguided.
In shifting focus to the United States, do you think that there are similar left-wing, virtually money laundering operations here that are aimed at influencing American politics, particularly through the media?
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Soros said very early on, I believe in the mid-'90s, that he wanted to turn his attention inward towards the United States. He's an American, he's free to do so. As I said in my testimony, I'm also free to criticize him. I disagree with him on the positions he takes. As I said, he's free to do that with his money. I'm free to criticize.
Right, and I think we can also look to taxpayer-funded propaganda outlets like NPR and PBS as well.
I believe that's playing out today in the Senate, yes.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Let me break this down for you. Representative Gil from Texas did an outstanding job exposing the hypocrisy of the left during this hearing. First, he addressed the Democrats' obsession with gender equity, and he's absolutely right to call out their insanity. These are the same people who can't define what a woman is, yet they want to lecture us about gender issues. They're the ones pushing men into women's bathrooms and locker rooms. They're the ones destroying women's sports by allowing biological males to compete against our daughters. And yes, they're the ones who want to use our tax dollars to fund irreversible surgeries on confused children. But the real bombshell came when the hearing focused on USAID's activities under Samantha Power. According to witness testimony from Mr. Gonzalez, USAID was actively working to overthrow democratically elected governments in Hungary, Guatemala, and Macedonia. Let that sink in. The same administration that spent 4 years screaming about election interference was using American taxpayer money to conduct regime change operations against our own NATO allies. Hungary is a crucial ally in Eastern Europe. They border Ukraine and have been steadfast supporters of conservative values, pro-life policies, and strong support for Israel and Taiwan. But apparently, that wasn't good enough for the Biden administration. Because Hungary wouldn't bow down to the woke agenda, Samantha Power and USAID decided they needed to go. This is absolutely unconscionable. Hungary is a sovereign nation and a NATO ally. They have every right to govern themselves according to their own values and the will of their people. But the globalist left can't stand it when any nation refuses to embrace their radical ideology. So they use our money, your money, to fund opposition groups and media organizations to try to destabilize these governments. The witness made it clear that this wasn't about national security. In fact, it was completely counterproductive to our security interests. These operations actually played into Vladimir Putin's hands by making pro-American citizens in these countries question whether the United States could be trusted. When we interfere in the domestic politics of our allies, we push them towards seeking alternatives to American leadership. And here's what really gets me fired up about this whole situation. The same people who spent years investigating every possible connection between Trump and Russia were simultaneously using government agencies to interfere in foreign elections. The hypocrisy is staggering. They investigated a sitting president based on a fake dossier paid for by Hillary Clinton, while they were actually doing what they accused Trump of doing. This pattern extended beyond Hungary. We heard testimony that similar operations were conducted in Guatemala and Macedonia. What did these countries have in common? They all had conservative governments that supported traditional values, were pro-life, pro-Israel, and pro-Taiwan. In other words, they were guilty of being conservative and refusing to embrace the left's radical social agenda. The witness also raised concerns about similar operations happening right here at home. We know George Soros has been funneling money into American politics for decades, funding radical district attorneys who refuse to prosecute criminals and organizations that promote the very policies that are destroying our cities. And let's not forget about the taxpayer-funded propaganda outlets like NPR and PBS that masquerade as objective journalism while pushing leftist narratives. This hearing exposed the deep state in action. These are unelected bureaucrats who think they know better than the voters of sovereign nations. They believe they have the right to use American taxpayer dollars to impose their ideology on the rest of the world, even when it conflicts with American interests and undermines our relationships with key allies. Representative Gil deserves credit for asking the tough questions and exposing this corruption. This is exactly the kind of oversight we need in Congress. We need representatives who will hold these agencies accountable and demand answers about how our tax dollars are being spent. The American people deserve to know that their government was conducting regime change operations against Democratic allies, simply because those allies refuse to embrace woke ideology. This isn't about promoting democracy or human rights. This is about ideological imperialism, using American power and money to force other nations to adopt radical left-wing policies. What makes this even worse is that these operations were conducted while Americans were struggling with inflation, crime, and border security issues at home. Instead of focusing on the problems facing American families, the Biden administration was spending our money trying to overthrow conservative governments overseas. This testimony should be front-page news in every major newspaper and the lead story on every network. But don't hold your breath waiting for CNN or MSNBC to cover this honestly. They're too busy protecting their allies in the deep state and covering up their failures. Patriots, this is why we need America First leadership. We need representatives who will put American interests first, not the globalist agenda. We need to drain the swamp and hold these agencies accountable for their abuse of power. And we need to make sure that American tax dollars are spent on American priorities, not on regime change operations against our allies. This hearing is just the beginning. We need full investigations into USAID's activities, Samantha Power's role in these operations, and how many other countries were targeted by the Biden administration. The American people deserve answers, and those responsible for this abuse of power need to be held accountable. Make sure to share this video with everyone you know. The mainstream media won't tell this story, so it's up to us to get the truth out there. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our content. Together, we can hold the swamp accountable and restore America First principles to our government. Thanks for watching America First. Patriots.